Bernie Sanders swung through Pennsylvania over the weekend, stopping in Philadelphia on Friday, Philadelphia again later Friday night, Lancaster, Pennsylvania on Saturday, finishing in Allentown, Pennsylvania, Saturday afternoon. Aida Chavez, reporter with The Intercept, was with him for some of that tour. So we're going to get her reflections on Bernie's, or her weekend with Bernie. The Philadelphia trip began with a Q&A with Larry Krasner. Krasner, if you recall, is the kind of radical prosecutor who ran in 2017 and unseated the establishment DA there in Philadelphia, and has very quickly implemented one of the most far-reaching prosecutorial reform agendas that's ever been put into effect in the country. How into the weeds did Sanders seem to be on the issue? Because criminal justice reform feels like the kind of thing that he's for, and he's going to be on the right side of it, and he's going to endorse whatever. But it's not breaking up the banks. It's not Medicare for all. It's not debt-free college. It is an economic issue, but it's not. And so, did he let Krasner kind of explain the specifics of it, or did he get into it as well with him?
He connected it in the ways that he knows best. So, like pharmaceuticals, the war on drugs, marijuana, those kinds of things, he's good at connecting back to the criminal justice system. But what I notice is that a common criticism of Bernie by some people on the left has been that he doesn't really pay attention to the specifics of race and racial inequalities, and kind of hyper-focuses on economic inequalities. I did notice that one of the people on the panel kind of did, not really call him out, but flesh out his point and say, race is also a big part of this, because he was focusing on economic issues. And so I almost felt like that was him kind of trying to make amends for, his last presidential run, I guess, is paying more attention to that. So
from there, he goes to a place that culturally couldn't be much more different than Philadelphia, Amish country in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. You didn't head out to that trip, right? So this is for the Jess King Lloyd Smucker race. It used to be the Jess King Christina Hartman race. That was the kind of progressive Democrat running against an establishment Democrat in the primary. Hartman dropped out when the district became redder after the Supreme Court redrew the boundaries. So now it's just Jess King versus the Republican. And so Bernie went out to hold a rally there. More than 2,000 lefties showed up in Amish country to rally for Bernie Sanders and Jess King, which is quite an extraordinary moment in kind of central Pennsylvania political history. We'll see if that ends up translating in the fall to an upset victory there. This is a race that the Democratic establishment felt was so unwinnable that they literally had their candidate leave that race. And from there, he traveled over to Allentown, Pennsylvania. So tell us a little bit about that rally.
Sure. So the rally was at this symphony hall, but it was absolutely packed. The crowd was pretty diverse, and they seemed pretty just riled up to see Greg Edwards and Bernie together. A lot of people there said that Bernie's endorsement really kind of helped them decide on Greg Edwards. It kind of gave him progressive credentials.
So what was Greg Edwards like as a candidate, as a speaker at the rally?
He reminded me a lot of Bernie. They have the same kind of populist, progressive message, very inclusive, but I thought he was a really fascinating speaker because he is a pastor. He has a way of moving people with his voice and his words.
Not exactly the Bernie delivery.
Yeah, not really the Bernie delivery, It does remind me of being in church a little bit, but people, were super inspired, they were crazy cheers, deafening cheers.
And I'm from Allentown, and Aida actually saw my dad without knowing it. What was he up to?
He was waiting to take a picture with Greg, and I didn't realize it was your dad until I saw your newsletter.
This is a fascinating race that's going on right now. It has this guy, John Morganelli, who, after the election, multiple times tweeted at Donald Trump, not the way that most of you all tweet at Donald Trump, but trying to get a job with him. And look, it's one thing if you're hard up, you need work, whatever. How pitiful is this, that the way that you're going to try to get a job with Trump is tweeting at him? And of course, it didn't work. He even offered his legal services to represent Ivanka when she got in that weird thing with the airline. This is like a post-midnight tweet that Morganelli sent out. And there's a reason he was trying to get a job with the Trump administration. The politics all line up. He's kind of pro-NRA. He's anti-choice. He's anti-immigrant. He's running now in the Democratic primary for Congress. He has two opponents, one Greg Edwards, who Aida saw speak on Saturday, and the other Susan Wild, who now has the backing of Emily's List, which is putting about $1 million in to try to elect her. Her problem, though, she was the solicitor for the city of Allentown. In 2015, this Allentown police officer just brutally assaulted a suspect, kicking him in the jaw, knocking his teeth out, breaking his jaw. And in 2016, she put out a statement saying that she had thoroughly reviewed the situation and that his actions were appropriate under the circumstances, and that she looked forward to defending him in court. That didn't happen. They wound up settling it for $160,000, and as you can see in the video yourself, nobody can really look at that and genuinely believe that it was appropriate under the circumstances. So having been to the district, the primary is May 15th. What's your sense of how this plays out?
So I think Morganelli definitely has the most name recognition, which is what people in the district were saying, but I actually think that Bernie might be able to move the needle, because I heard from a lot of people after the rally that they were kind of overwhelmed with the number of candidates who were running, and Bernie's endorsement kind of helped them weed through and kind of figure out who is most closely aligned with my progressive politics.
What about Susan Wild, the Emily's List backed candidate? What do people have thoughts on her?
I did hear a couple who didn't really have that big of concerns over her defense of the officer who shattered that guy's jaw.
My own dad, when I talked to him about it, he had been kind of leaning toward Wild earlier. My dad was like, I like Edwards, but I think Wild has a better chance of beating the Republican in the general election. But after the Edwards rally, I think he changed his mind. Do you think that they were all Edwards supporters who showed up for the rally, or do you think they were kind of curious Democrats who came away Edwards supporters?
I think a good amount of them were Edwards supporters, and I also think the other chunk of people were just really hyped to see Bernie speak, and they came out being convinced Edwards, this is our guy.